A homeless child discovers a dog, sparking a chain of events that reveals a startling truth about both him and the dog. Unbeknownst to him, that night will mark a turning point in his life. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled the air as Sam blinked into consciousness, the brightness of the overhead lights pressing against his eyelids. His chest ached with a dull, persistent throb, an unrelenting reminder of the operation that had saved him. The room, pristine and white, was bustling with muted activity. Nurses moved like shadows, and monitors hummed, marking the rhythm of his new heartbeat. A doctor in a white coat approached, his eyes kind but weary. "Sam, you're a fighter," he said, his voice a low murmur, almost drowned by the beeps of the monitors. "You're very lucky. Receiving a heart in time, it's nothing short of a miracle." The word miracle felt heavy, almost mocking. Sam forced a nod, but his throat constricted. What kind of miracle took everything away and left him alone? Sam swallowed, but the words caught in his throat like a sharp edge. The crash that had shattered his world returned in flashes, the crunch of metal, the blare of a horn, his mother's scream. Only he had emerged from the wreckage alive. The new heart beat within him, but it felt foreign, an intruder in a body haunted by loss. He turned away as a nurse stepped in, her smile too wide, her voice too bright. "We've brought flowers for you, Sam. Everyone's so proud of how brave you've been." The cheer in her tone clashed with the icy ache in his chest. Sam's eyes flickered to the bouquet and then beyond, to the slant of light spilling through the window. It was evening, and the sky had turned a bruised shade of purple. "I don't feel brave," Sam whispered to himself. The weight of emptiness settled on him, heavy as stone. As the door clicked shut, the murmur of conversation seeped through from the hallway. Sam's ears pricked when he heard his grandparents' voices, low and taut. He strained to listen. "He needs stability, not us at our age," his grandfather said, his voice cracked with age and resolve. "The agency will find him a family. We can't raise him." "He deserves more than we can give," his grandmother agreed, a trace of guilt softening her tone. Sam's breath caught, the betrayal slicing through him like the coldest wind. They didn't want him. Even with a new heart, even after everything, he was still alone. Day by day, the numbness fractured, and in its place, a storm of panic swelled. One day, Sam realized that it was time for him to leave. The thin hospital gown clung to him as he moved, stealing glances to ensure he was unseen. The hallway loomed quiet under the fluorescent lights, and he slipped out, each step a jolt that reminded him of the fragility within. The city outside was a dazzling chaos of light and motion. Christmas decorations twinkled in every window, strings of fairy lights draped over branches and artificial snow-coated storefronts. Carols played softly from a nearby radio, cheerful and mocking. Families bustled along the street, their laughter and chatter brushing past him like ghosts. Sam hugged his thin frame, his breath crystallizing in the cold air. The shimmering world around him only deepened, the void gnawing at his heart. "Mom, Dad," he whispered into the biting wind, but the words dissolved before they reached anyone. He pressed on, crossing streets and slipping into alleys, the pain in his chest throbbing in time with his rapid steps. The city that glittered so brightly felt like a labyrinth without end, where every turn was another reminder of what he'd lost. Finally, exhaustion overtook him. He found a small recess between two buildings where the wind couldn't reach. The concrete was unforgiving beneath him, leaching what little warmth he had left. He curled up, knees to chest, the thin fabric of his gown no match for the chill. As he drifted into a restless sleep, The memory of his mother's embrace enveloped him, warm and fleeting. For a moment, in the fragile realm between waking and dreaming, he was safe again, wrapped in their love. But reality clawed him back, leaving only the sting of the cold and the weight of silence. The city was hushed under the blanket of a winter night, the air sharp with cold and the faint glisten of frost on cobblestones. Sam lay curled up against the rough stone wall of an old alleyway, wrapped in a tattered coat barely enough to fend off the chill. His breath came in shallow puffs, a mist mingling with the darkness as his eyes fluttered closed, surrendering to the exhaustion that gripped his small body. In the fleeting moments before sleep took him, Sam's mind drifted back to happier days, memories long buried beneath layers of grief. He was back at school, the warm golden light filtering through the window panes. Outside, laughter and the rhythmic thud of a bouncing ball echoed. But it wasn't the sounds or the light that drew the tight ache of longing from his chest. It was the sight of his parents standing at the gate, their smiles bright and eyes full of pride. "Come on, Sammy," his father called, waving. His mother's voice followed, soft and inviting. "We're taking you for ice cream today." Tears pricked at the corners of Sam's eyes, even in the dream, and he reached out, hands trembling, seeking the warmth that felt so real. "Please, don't go," he whispered. A sudden shift in the real world jolted him awake, his heart pounding as if trying to shake off the bittersweet remnants of his dream. The weight of reality crashed over him, heavy and cold. But there was something else, a warmth pressed against his side that shouldn't have been there. Sam's eyes flew open, wide with confusion. Lying close, so close that its fur brushed against his cheek, was an Alaskan. Its coat was thick and silken, painted in shades of snow and ash, with eyes the color of a winter sky. The dog's breath came out in gentle puffs that matched Sam's, its chest rising and falling in a soothing rhythm. Sam blinked, disbelief twisting into wonder. He lifted a hesitant hand and, as if sensing the movement, the dog opened its eyes and looked at him. There was no fear in its gaze, only a calm, profound intelligence. The animal shifted slightly, its tail thumping the ground as it leaned forward to lick Sam's face, a warm, wet touch that made him flinch before soft laughter bubbled up, foreign yet comforting. Where did you come from?" Sam whispered, voice cracking as he pressed his face into the soft fur. The dog licked his ear playfully as if to answer, and Sam let out a small, stifled sob that was neither sad nor wholly joyful. Just a release. The dog's ears twitched, and its tail wagged harder. Sam felt a surge of something he hadn't known in months, a fragile but fierce hope. The dog settled against him again, pressing closer, as if to reassure Sam of its presence, its loyalty. The cold seemed less biting with the dog's body warmth spreading through him. Morning crept over the horizon, spilling light that painted the narrow alley in pale hues of gold and blue. Sam shifted slightly, mindful not to disturb the dog, who now slept peacefully beside him. The street noises were distant, a muted backdrop to their quiet world. Sam sat up, brushing frost from his hair, and looked down at the dog. The dog stirred, one eye opening before it stood, shaking the cold from its fur. Sam grinned despite himself, feeling a lightness that was almost forgotten. "Come on, boy. Let's see what the day holds for us," Sam said, his voice stronger, steadier. The dog barked, a deep, joyful sound that echoed in the alleyway. The two set off, the boy and the dog, as the city slowly woke around them. Sam no longer felt alone. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, he had a companion. A bond had formed in the silence of the night, and he knew with unshakable certainty that the dog was more than just a stray. He was a friend, perhaps even a guardian, sent by some unseen force to remind Sam that even in the darkest moments, light could be found. Snow blanketed the streets like a shimmering quilt, softening the edges of the city and muting the sounds of traffic. Sam's small feet, wrapped in tattered sneakers, left uneven prints as he trudged down an alleyway, the dog by his side. The dog's thick fur glistened with patches of snow, its eyes bright with mischief as it sniffed the cold air. This winter, though harsh, brought Sam a warmth he hadn't felt in what seemed like a lifetime. "Boy, look at that," Sam whispered, pointing toward a fast-food restaurant bustling with people. The glow of neon signs promised warmth and food, an enticing beacon on a frigid afternoon. They moved closer, the scent of grilled meat and fried potatoes drifting toward them like a siren's call. "Stay here, buddy," Sam said, crouching beside the dog, whose ears twitched as he sat obediently. Sam knew this drill by heart. Watch, wait, and hope. But before he could plot his next move, the dog, unable to contain his playful spirit, darted to the side entrance. His sudden bark, a joyous burst of sound, made a young man holding a steaming hamburger jump. "Damn it!" The man cursed as the burger slipped from his hands and hit the pavement. He shot the dog a scowl before stomping off, shaking his head. Sam's eyes sparkled, a grin spreading across his face. He rushed forward, grabbing the burger quickly, its warmth seeping into his frozen fingers. "You're unbelievable, boy," he chuckled, breaking the bun in half and offering a piece to his companion. The dog's tail wagged furiously as he devoured the morsel, his eyes never leaving Sam's. "Looks like it's a feast today," Sam murmured, taking a bite of the slightly squished meal. The taste of salt and meat was heavenly, a rare luxury in their rough life. As they sat by the side of the restaurant, the snow fell in lazy spirals, and for a moment the city felt almost peaceful. The days bled into each other like watercolors, filled with small victories and playful adventures. Sam and his four-legged friend roamed the city streets, a duo bound by shared hunger and moments of light-hearted joy. They played in the snow, the dog leaping and rolling, scattering white powder as Sam laughed, a sound that felt foreign, as if it had been buried deep for too long. One afternoon, they discovered an empty plaza where frost-dusted statues stood like silent guardians. Sam tossed a stick, and the dog bounded after it, his breath a frosty puff in the air. "Bring it back, you silly mutt," Sam called, his voice breaking into a rare, carefree shout. The dog returned, eyes bright and triumphant, dropping the stick at Sam's feet. "Good boy," Sam whispered, kneeling down to ruffle the dog's fur. The cold nipped at his fingers, but he didn't care. There was warmth in this bond, this wordless understanding that they were all each other had. The weight in Sam's chest lightened as if the dog's joy could somehow seep into his own weary heart. As night fell, they sought shelter under a bridge, a place where the concrete walls kept the wind at bay. Sam wrapped his thin jacket tighter around himself and leaned against the dog. The dog nestled closer, his heartbeat a steady rhythm against Sam's arm. "Do you think we'll always be like this?" Sam asked softly, as if the dog could answer. In the dim light, the dog's eyes seemed almost knowing, offering silent reassurance. The city around them roared and bustled, oblivious to the small, fragile world the two of them shared. The hunger, the cold, the loneliness, they were constants. But now, with the dog's warm body pressed against him, those hardships seemed a little more bearable. Sam stared out at the flakes of snow, wondering how a stray like him could have found something so precious. "Good night, boy," Sam whispered, closing his eyes. The dog's tail thumped softly against the ground as if replying, "We'll be okay, Sam." And in the deep silence that followed, the night seemed a little less cold, a little less lonely. The chill of late November crept through the narrow streets, slicing through the thin fabric of Sam's worn-out jacket. The city, alive with the glow of festive lights and whispers of holiday cheer, felt colder than ever to him. Thanksgiving was near, and every window seemed to frame a scene from another world, a warm, bustling world of laughter and togetherness that Sam could only watch from the outside. By his side trotted the dog, with fur matted and eyes bright, the one unwavering companion Sam had in this vast, indifferent city. "Stay close," Sam whispered, as a pair of uniformed officers appeared at the end of the street. Their eyes darted over the passers-by, scanning for trouble, and for a moment Sam's heart seized with panic. The dog seemed to sense his fear, ears twitching as if hearing his racing heartbeat. "Come on, we have to move," Sam urged, glancing around for an escape route. He darted into an alley, the dog following without hesitation, paws clicking against the cobblestones. The shouts of the officers faded behind them as they wove through the maze of darkened paths, breathless and driven by the same unspoken instinct to run. Minutes stretched like hours, until finally the streets opened into a quieter part of town. Sam's legs felt like lead, but the dog was the first to stop, his body tensing, nose quivering at the scents wafting through the air. Sam followed the dog's gaze and found himself standing before a grand restaurant. Golden light spilled from its windows, casting the snow-laden pavement in a warm amber glow. Inside, a family sat at a long table, faces alight with joy as they shared a meal that seemed to stretch endlessly. Turkey, mashed potatoes, the works. The scene pierced Sam's chest, an ache as familiar as breathing. "Is this what it's supposed to be like?" he murmured, eyes fixed on the family's laughter. The dog's ears drooped slightly, as if he too felt the pang of longing. Sam sank onto the cold curb, drawing his knees to his chest while the dog settled beside him, pressing close enough that Sam could feel the slow rise and fall of its body. "I remember," Sam whispered, voice trembling with the weight of memories. "Thanksgiving used to mean my mum's apple pie, the one that always made the whole kitchen smell sweet for days." He looked down at the dog, whose eyes met his with an uncanny understanding. "And Dad would tell the same old jokes, the ones that weren't funny but made us laugh anyway." The dog shifted, resting its head on Sam's knee as if to say, "I'm here. I understand." The streets around them fell silent, the hum of the city muffled under the first flurries of snow. For a moment, it was just them, two souls wrapped in the thin thread of shared loneliness. Sam reached out, fingers weaving through the dog's fur, rough but comforting in its own way. "We're more alike than I thought," he said, a fragile smile breaking the somber lines of his face. "We've both lost something we can never get back, haven't we? But, at least, we're not alone." The dog responded with a low, soft whine, its tail wagging faintly. The warmth that had eluded Sam for so long crept into his heart, fragile but real. He realized that for better or worse, they were each other's family now, a bond formed not by blood, but by survival, and an unspoken promise to keep going, no matter how cold the night. As snowflakes settled on Sam's hair and the dog's fur, their breath mingled in small clouds of warmth. The laughter from the restaurant faded into the background, leaving just the steady thrum of the city and the soft press of companionship. "Happy Thanksgiving," Sam whispered to the dog, who blinked up at him as if to return the sentiment. And in that moment, despite the chill and the hunger, Sam felt something close to contentment, a fleeting sense that, even in the darkest nights, there could still be light. The silence of the night was shattered by the smooth hum of an engine, growing louder until a sleek, black car pulled up beside them. Sam's eyes darted to the vehicle, heart hammering in his chest. The car's polished surface gleamed under the light, dark windows obscuring any view of who might be inside. The boy tensed, instinct telling him to run, but the gentle growl from his companion rooted him to the spot. The back door of the car opened with a soft click, and a figure stepped out. A woman, elegant and poised, draped in a fur coat that seemed to shimmer with each breath of the cold wind. Her silver hair, styled impeccably, framed a face marked by time, yet undeniably striking. The sharp scent of expensive perfume cut through the crisp night air as she approached. Before Sam could react, the dog at his side sprang up, tail wagging furiously. A high-pitched whine escaped its throat as it bounded towards the woman. She suddenly knelt down beside the dog. "Oh, darling, there you are. I've been looking for you for a long time, you know." Her voice broke as she wrapped her arms around the dog, clutching it tightly. The animal nuzzled into her embrace, soft whimpers of joy mixing with her sobs. Sam's heart clenched at the sight. His friend, the one who had warmed his cold nights, now cradled in the arms of someone to whom it truly belonged. The realization hit him with the weight of the winter frost. The dog had a family. It wasn't his, after all. Sam's fingers dug into his knees, nails biting through the thin fabric. He looked away, unable to watch the scene any longer. The warmth that had nestled against him during countless lonely nights was now sharing an intimacy he couldn't touch. A lump rose in his throat, but he forced it down, swallowing the familiar sting of loss. He had known loneliness before. This was just another chapter of it. The woman, Regina, finally lifted her gaze and noticed the small, shivering figure that had been left behind. Her brow furrowed, eyes searching Sam's face with an expression that shifted from surprise to understanding. The dog, sensing Regina's attention shift, glanced back at Sam, then whined as if urging her to see what it had seen in the boy. Were you taking care of him?" Regina asked softly, wiping a tear with a gloved hand. Sam hesitated, the instinct to flee, battling with the desire to stay just a little longer. He nodded, eyes fixed on the icy pavement. "He found me," Sam whispered, voice barely audible. "And he stayed." Regina's eyes softened, and she stepped forward, still holding the dog close. "You must have been a great comfort to him. I can see he's fond of you." The corners of her mouth lifted into a sad smile. "Why don't you join me for a meal, as thanks for looking after him? This place," she gestured toward the restaurant's warm lights, "it's where we always came together." The invitation hung in the frosty air between them, fragile and shimmering like the icicles hanging from the nearby awning. Sam's eyes met Regina's, searching for any hint of pity, but all he found was a genuine gratitude that he hadn't felt in what seemed like a lifetime. I guess I could," Sam stammered, the cold in his chest thawing slightly under the warmth of her gaze. The dog wagged its tail as if to approve, nudging Sam's hand with its nose. A hint of a smile flickered on the boy's lips as he stood up, one step closer to the glow of the restaurant and the possibility of something more than just survival. Regina gestured for him to follow, and Sam did, feeling the echo of his parents' warmth for the first time in a long while. The snow began to fall softly around them, a silent promise that this night would be different. The warm glow of the chandeliers cast a golden light across the room, making the polished wood of the dining table gleam. Sam sat hunched on the edge of a high-backed chair, fingers nervously fidgeting with a thread from his worn-out sweater. Across from him, Regina sat gracefully, her posture straight, a soft smile playing at the corners of her lips. The clink of silverware filled the silence as dishes were placed gently before them. The scent of roast chicken and warm bread mingled with the subtle fragrance of the candles, wrapping the space in an oddly comforting embrace. Mocha lay beside Sam, his large frame pressed against the boy's legs as though seeking reassurance. Regina's eyes, sharp yet tender, shifted from the golden retriever to Sam, who glanced at his plate but made no move to eat. She sighed softly, taking a sip of water before speaking. "It's curious, you know," she began, her voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of wonder. "Mocha has never taken to strangers. Not once in all the years we've had him." Her gaze softened as she watched Mocha's tail thump lightly against Sam's foot. "But seeing him with you, it's as though he's found something familiar." Sam's fingers froze mid-motion. He looked up, eyes wide, caught between embarrassment and curiosity. "He's been my only friend," he said quietly, daring to meet Regina's eyes for a brief moment before looking away. "Since I ran from the hospital." Regina's expression shifted, an unspoken sadness settling in her eyes. "I lost him not long ago, right here outside this very restaurant." She paused, her voice barely a whisper. "It's where we used to come often, with my son." The weight of her words seemed to press into the room, thickening the silence between them. Sam swallowed, the realization forming a dull ache in his chest. He glanced at Mocha, now watching them both with an almost knowing look. The dog's brown eyes, once brimming with playfulness, now seemed filled with a quiet wisdom. Regina's voice drew him back. "I wonder if he recognized something here," she said, a small smile breaking through the sadness. "Or perhaps someone." The rest of the meal passed in silence, punctuated only by the occasional sound of cutlery or Mocha shifting on the floor. As the last of the dishes were cleared away, Regina stood smoothing the silk of her dress. "We should get going," she said softly, nodding to the chauffeur waiting by the door. Sam felt the familiar cold of reality seeping back in. He reached down to pat Mocha's head, hoping to convey the unspoken goodbye. But as Regina called out, "Mocha, come!" the dog didn't move. Instead, he pressed his muzzle against Sam's leg, a low whine escaping him. When Regina's driver stepped forward to pull the dog away, Mocha's demeanor changed instantly. A growl rumbled in his chest, deep and feral, startling everyone in the room. Before anyone could react, Mocha lunged forward, bumping Sam, who staggered backward. The sharp sting on his chest was immediate. Sam gasped, clutching at the fabric that now lay open, revealing a thin, jagged scar running down the center of his chest. The room fell into stunned silence. Regina's eyes widened, her hand flying to her mouth. The driver froze mid-step, eyes darting between the boy and the dog, whose growl had subsided into whimpers. Sam, heart thundering in his chest, looked up just in time to see tears welling in Regina's eyes. "Your scar," Regina whispered, stepping closer. Her hands trembled slightly as she gestured to his chest. When did you have the surgery?" Sam's voice was barely a whisper. 3 months ago, at La Paltine Hospital, after the accident." The words hung in the air, heavy and raw. Regina's expression changed from shock to something deeper, a realization so profound it seemed to steal the breath from her lungs. "William," she said, the name a soft, anguished cry as she reached for Sam, drawing him into an embrace. Mocha, now silent, leaned into them both, eyes closed as though feeling the weight of the moment. Tears pricked Sam's eyes as warmth spread through the room, a warmth he hadn't felt in months, as if the broken pieces of his world were slowly, achingly coming together. Everything seemed to fall silent as Regina's embrace tightened around him. Her perfume was subtle, a blend of rose and something he couldn't quite name, but it reminded him of the warmth of a home he'd never known. She pulled back, her eyes wide with disbelief and a flood of emotions, glistening in the dim light of the restaurant. Sam's breath quickened as he saw tears welling in her eyes, but he couldn't speak, couldn't find the words to ask why she was calling him by that name. His eyes darted down to the dog, Mocha, who sat at his feet, watching the scene unfold with a look that was both serene and knowing. The dog's large brown eyes shone with a recognition that Sam himself didn't understand. Regina's voice broke the silence again. 3 months ago, my son, William, he was in an accident. The doctors said there was no hope, and I agreed to let his heart be donated. It was the hardest thing I ever had to do. Her voice cracked, and she brought her hands to her mouth, trying to contain the sob that fought to escape. Sam felt his knees go weak, a chill spreading through his body that had nothing to do with the winter outside. He touched his chest, the scar pulsing as if in response. It all came crashing into place, the nurse's whispers at the hospital, the look of pity in the doctor's eyes, everything pointed to the truth that now sat in front of him, unbearable in its reality. The heart beating inside him was William's. It's his heart? Sam's voice was barely a whisper, and he looked up at Regina, who nodded slowly, her tears now streaming freely down her face. The room seemed to spin, and he felt Mocha press closer to him, warm and solid, grounding him amidst the storm in his mind. Yes, Sam. And Mocha. Mocha was William's. He loved that dog more than anything. After the accident, Mocha ran away, as if he couldn't bear to stay without William. Regina's eyes softened as they flicked between Sam and the dog. And now I see why. He must have felt it. Felt the heart of his true companion within you. The silence stretched thin and taut, broken only by the shallow breaths that filled Sam's lungs. Mocha nudged his hand with a cold nose, eyes deep with an inexplicable understanding. The realization struck him with an almost physical force. Mocha had found him not by chance, but because of something far deeper, a link that defied explanation but resonated with a truth he could no longer deny. Regina wiped at her face, a fragile smile breaking through her tears. It's like part of William is still here, alive in you, Sam. The words brought a lump to Sam's throat, both painful and comforting. Regina asked Sam emotionally, "Where do you live? I will take you home. I really want to meet your parents." The reality of it all settled heavily over him, and he dropped his gaze. "Mrs. Regina, I don't have a home. My parents, they're gone. I've been alone ever since." Her expression shifted to one of deep sorrow. She reached out, brushing his unruly hair from his eyes. "You're not alone now," she said, her voice steadier, filled with resolve. "Come with me, Sam. Let me take care of you. You and Mocha both." Sam looked at Mocha, who sat loyally, eyes pleading. His heart ached with the familiar fear of being unwanted, of stepping into another life only to be cast out again. He took a shaky breath, the offer of warmth and belonging a tantalizing yet frightening possibility. But before he could respond, the image of his parents flashed in his mind, their smiles, the love they'd shared, and he knew he had to hold on to their memory a while longer to find his path alone. "Thank you, Mrs. Regina," he managed, his voice thick. He stroked Mocha's head, then stepped back, fighting the tears. "But I can't. Not yet." He turned and walked into the winter night, Mocha's soft whimper echoing behind him, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, some connections were impossible to sever. The morning sunlight filtered through the grand windows of Regina's mansion, casting a golden glow on the polished wood floors and antique furniture. The scent of pine mingled with the faint aroma of freshly baked bread, filling the house with warmth that had long been absent. Regina stood in the doorway, her eyes softening as she watched Sam step cautiously into the foyer, his small frame still marked by a slight hunch, a defense learned from a life spent on the streets. "Welcome home, Sam," Regina said, her voice gentle but firm. Mocha, the large Alaska dog with fur as white as winter snow, bounded forward, tail wagging in exuberant circles. Sam knelt and buried his fingers in Mocha's thick coat, his eyes misting over with a mix of disbelief and joy. The dog's warmth seeped into him, chasing away the chill of so many lonely nights. "Thank you, Mrs. Regina," Sam whispered, glancing up shyly. The older woman shook her head, stepping closer. "No, Sam. From now on, call me Regina," she replied, laying a soft hand on his shoulder. The moment was fleeting, interrupted by a sharp voice from the hallway. "This is absurd, Mother." The voice cut through the tender silence like a blade. Regina's daughter Clarissa stood there, her silhouette outlined in the soft glow of the morning light. Her gaze was sharp, calculating, and betrayed no warmth. "Taking in this boy could complicate everything. Have you thought of the consequences for the estate?" Regina's expression did not waver. The years had carved both wisdom and grief into her face, but they had also instilled an unbreakable resolve. "I have, Clarissa, and I have made my decision. William's legacy is not only in wealth, but in kindness. Sam stays." Clarissa's eyes narrowed, frustration giving way to resignation. She knew that tone. Her mother's mind was a fortress, impenetrable when it came to matters of the heart. With a tight jaw, Clarissa turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing down the long hallway. The air shifted, tension easing as Mocha barked, breaking the silence with a cheerful wag of his tail. Sam stood, still tentative, the edges of uncertainty lingering in his movements. Regina offered him a reassuring nod. "Come, let's make this house a home again." Later that afternoon, the grand living room, once a space defined by silence, bustled with newfound life. Boxes of ornaments lay scattered across the floor, their contents spilling out in a colourful array of reds, golds, and greens. Sam's fingers brushed over a delicate glass ornament shaped like a star, his heart fluttering with an unfamiliar sense of belonging. "Would you like to help me with the tree?" Regina asked, holding out a silver garland. Sam nodded, a small smile breaking through his usual guarded expression. Mocha padded over, curling up beside them, eyes watching every move as if memorizing this moment. They worked slowly, the room filling with soft laughter as Sam shared small stories about his past, silly antics on cold nights, the games he'd invent to pass the time. Regina listened, each word weaving him deeper into the fabric of her heart. "You know, this reminds me of William," Regina said, her voice tinged with bittersweet nostalgia. "He would always insist on putting the star on top, saying it was the brightest part of Christmas." Sam glanced at the star in his hand, understanding now why Regina had chosen to bring him here, despite everything. He stepped closer to the towering tree, its branches adorned with twinkling lights and shimmering baubles. Carefully, he reached up and placed the star at the very top. Regina's eyes welled with tears, though a smile played on her lips. "Perfect," she whispered, and in that single word was the weight of acceptance, the recognition of past sorrows now given a chance at renewal. Mocha barked, tail thumping against the rug, as if echoing the sentiment. Sam turned to look at them both, warmth unfurling in his chest. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, he felt safe, loved. The room glowed with the golden light of the evening sun, mingling with the soft glimmer of Christmas lights. Together, Regina, Sam, and Mocha stood in the halo of light, the air fragrant with pine and hope. And as Sam gazed at the star shining atop the tree, he knew that amidst the pain and loss, he had found his place. A new beginning, bound not by blood, but by a love that transcended loss and spoke of second chances. Thank you for joining me on this heartfelt journey with Sam, Regina, and Mocha. Their story reminds us that even in the darkest times, hope and connection can light the way to a new beginning. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced moments of unexpected warmth or second chances that changed your life? Share your story in the comments below, and let's create a space where we celebrate love, resilience, and the bonds that make us stronger. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that touch the heart and inspire. Until next time, take care and keep spreading hope.